I'm T. Rick Jones. I'm the managing editor.
I'm Chris Post, contributing writer.
I'm Aster Lefkin. I'm also a contributing writer.
I'm Tony Tellado, host and creator of Sci-Fi Talk.
And this is your daily Star Trek news roundup for the week of April 28, 2024. So the first thing I want to talk about this week is David Ajala, who plays Book on Star Trek Discovery, did a recent interview. And Aster, you wrote that one up. Do you want to give us a little primer on what it was all about?
Yeah, so basically he was just talking about what it was like returning to Discovery because he had originally only signed a contract for season 3 and season 4. So that's why at the end of season 4 they sort of ended his story. And then the writers contacted him and they were like, "Hey, we would love it if you came back. We want to flesh out your character more and sort of think that he could, be more in the story." And he was like, "Oh my gosh, of course, I'd love to come back." So that's how he ended up on season 5. And that's why sort of at the end of season 4 they had an option to end his story, and that's why it sort of ended the way it did, according to him anyway, which I trust. I think he's a reliable source. He was there. So that's basically it. And then so that was the first part of the interview where he was just talking about leaving the show and then returning to the show and what that was like. And then he sort of started talking about Book's character in season 5 and how he's really excited for the audience to sort of see what happens. And he sort of hinted at possibly, he was like, "I'm really excited for you guys to see this one scene." And then it seems like it's probably going to be a Book and Michael scene, which I think will be really exciting. I'm really excited to see that. I love them. I think they're the best. So I that was the interview. Yeah, I thought it was interesting and fun, and I love Book, and I'm really liking his character in season 5 right now. So I think it'll be great.
I agree. I like Book a lot. So, Chris, what's your take on the news?
Well, yeah, he's actually David Ajala has done a couple of interviews. They've got him making the rounds, but he said similar things in all of them. Is that he was ready to be done at the end of season 4, that the story had come to a conclusion. I'm glad that he got to come back because I did not like the conclusion of his story at the end of season 4. Like, um, you know, I'm not sure how I would have done it, had I been in the writers' room, but I'm glad that Starfleet kind of took a holistic look at things when they were deciding what to do with Cleveland Booker, because he did some really bad things. He he kind of went off the rails there a little bit, and under different circumstances could have been in a penal colony somewhere. So I was kind of glad that they were like, we're going to clip his wings a little bit, we're going to take away some of his freedom, but we're not going to incarcerate him, we're going to make him do some, I don't know, corrective work to make up for what he did. And so I guess that's better than prison for Booker, as far as like Starfleet being Starfleet and not, say, the Romulans or the Klingons. But it was not a satisfying conclusion. It was not a good place to leave him forever. And so I'm glad that he's back, and I'm liking what I'm seeing so far in season 5. So I think that the writers made a good choice by bringing him back and making better use of the character for this season.
Yeah, I agree. I did not like his ending, and I really like the character a lot, and I like his relationship with Burnham. I think it's one of the more real relationships Star Trek has ever done. They have fun together, they like each other. It's better than Worf and Troy. Um
The bar is so low. You could have picked like anything. That was like the lowest bar you could have set.
um but it really is. I think it's really one of the best ones they've done, one of the best in
Yeah,
all.
Trek writers just in general don't have a good track record on crafting husband wife romantic relationships, like ride or die besties, they do really well, but romantic relationships not so much. And
Well,
so
and you can
this
see
is a good one. Probably in my mind, Riker and Troy, prior to Book and Burnham, was the best crafted relationship, with the most rewarding payoff. You know, their wedding was like
yeah,
finally, you know,
right.
but yeah, no, the writers got the Discovery writers really do relationships well. You know, Stamets and Culber is done really well, and Adira and Gray has been done really well, and so so the Discovery writers, kudos to them for getting those romantic relationships done at a much better level, because Star Trek, I stand by my statement, they've not done a good job of it in the past.
No, no, they have not. They're not great at romantic relationships. They're not great at father-son relationships, except for Cisco and Jake.
Yeah.
Those are, you know, those are things that the Star Trek writers need to work on. And I'm glad Book and Burnham are getting good writing, because you know, I love that relationship, and I love Book, and I love that he's doing these interview rounds. I think it's great. Next up, Pinewood Studios announced a change in one of their stages in Toronto. Chris, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so Pinewood is uh you've seen it. You just didn't know you were seeing it because they have so many so many things have been filmed there. It's kind of staggering. Uh it's an interesting thing. Canada has so much filmmaking that happens there that's not Canadian. It's mostly American productions that go to Canada. But Toronto is the number 4 in North America for film and television production. It's behind, or actually it's number 3. It's Los Angeles, New York, Toronto, and then Mexico City. So Toronto's number 3 in North America for film and television. And so you've probably seen shows that were filmed at Pinewood. So they have a lot of it's really big. It's a massive complex of sound stages and different things that they have going on there. And so they're naming one after Star Trek, because in recognition for all the Star Trek that's been there, and kind of as a goodbye to the Discovery cast and crew who have been working there for the past 5 seasons. Um, so it's kind of cool. You'll be able to go and tour and see it when you do a studio tour. If you ever go to Canada and go to Pinewood Studios, you'll be able to see the Star Trek soundstage named after it, and it's going to be they're I think they're going to be promoting it as part of their legacy, so to speak.
Yeah, they're. Would you say they're Star Trek legacy?
I uh, I wasn't going there, but sure. They do have a Star Trek legacy there, so
There you go. Aster, what do you think about this news?
It's cool. It's exciting. I always forget that stuff is filmed in Toronto. Like, I guess it makes sense because I know that Toronto has like a big art like sort of scene and stuff. But when I think of things that are filmed, I'm like LA and New York, and I just like never think of Toronto. But yeah, it's really cool. I don't know. I have like no thoughts other than that's really cool that they got a soundstage named after them, and I totally want to go to Toronto to visit.
Yeah, it's, you know, I think they get a lot of tax breaks filming in Canada. So a lot of things go there. When I heard Pinewood initially, I was thinking London, because
mhm.
Pinewood Studios actually originated in London. Um, but you know, it makes more sense Toronto, since that's where Star Trek's filmed. I imagine it was very easy for them to film the ISS Enterprise segments in last week's show, because the Enterprise sets are right there next to the Discovery sets.
Mm.
And
Yeah, the Section 31 film was also shot. A lot of it was shot there.
there you
So
go. So, um, so anyway, that's pretty cool. This week also another interviewee, Carlos Cisco, who is a not spelled like Benjamin Cisco. It's Cisco, not Sisko. He's been doing the rounds. He's a writer on Discovery. And Chris, you wrote this one up too, so hit us.
Yeah, so Carlos Cisco, he gave us episode 5. He was the primary screenwriter for episode 5, which fleshes out Breen Society a little bit more. And so it's an interesting thing. I was interested. We've seen the Breen around, but we didn't really know a lot about them. And this whole they can be liquid, they can be solid kind of a thing. That was new. That was new lore that was brought out, and I was on Reddit, which is it's it's Reddit. But there were people who were not happy. There were people who were unhappy that the Breen had taken off their masks. They thought that now the mystery is ruined, and so it was better when we didn't know what was going on inside those environmental suits. Um, but I thought it was interesting. We've talked about this on the show. We're all kind of like the behind the scenes minutia kind of stuff, and so I'm interested to know what's going on with the Breen. I'm interested to know why there are no female Breen. Why all the Breen are guys? What is up? What is up with that? And so. So I'd like to know a little bit more, but I don't know that we're going to get much more Breen backstory. Probably we'll get a little bit, because Locke is still out there being chased by this death warrant that's been issued against him. So we'll probably see a little bit more Breen, but I don't know how much more lore, kind of depth of stuff we're going to get. But that's and part of what Carlos Cisco was talking about in this interview was delving into lore and having fun exploring those kind of aspects. And I think Trek has been around so long that like its fan base is segmented a little bit, and there are the people who like pew pew space war kind of stuff in their Star Trek, and then there are people who like the fine details of Star Trek. And I think there's Star Trek is big enough for everybody.
Yeah.
And so this was good for those of us who like the minutia, maybe not so much for the people who like the pew pew spaceships, but
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting because the Breen have been around since DS9, but we've never seen them without their helmets. And I wasn't here last week when you guys discussed that, but I just think it's interesting. It's fun to get a little Breen backstory. I will say the Breen, when they first were created, made me think of Princess Leia in Return of the Jedi, that bounty center.
exactly. I thought the exact same thing too. Yeah.
so, so I was like, the perfect melding of Star Trek and Star Wars.
Yeah. No, that would have been funny if they took off their mask and they look like Carrie Fisher, but
that would have been
Tell you, Chris,
amazing.
the Star Trek needs to hire you. You have these amazing ideas.
They already scanned Carrie's face
Exactly,
for
yeah.
when they did the young Princess Leia in the film there, so they've already got the CGI is there. They could have just put it in there.
yeah, exactly. It's not too late. Maybe that's that one female
The one female.
they have looks like
The
that.
one female Breen is good. That's why we haven't seen them yet.
Fantastic. Let's do it. Let's send an email over to the screenwriters and let them know that that's what they need to do.
That'll be amazing. Aster, what's your take on the Carlos Cisco interview?
It was good. I was really excited to see the Breen, and sort of my favorite part about Star Trek, and we also see this in episode 6, but it's like learning about alien civilizations and learning about how cultures differ throughout civilizations. Really, that's my favorite part of it, like sci-fi in general. But so I was really excited to see the Breen. I was watching it. I was really I text my friend like my live reactions to the episodes, and he got like a string of like all caps text that was like, "You're not gonna believe what's happening. Oh my gosh." Um, So I was obviously really excited. And I think it was, I don't know if we covered this interview or I just read it with the actor who plays Locke talking about how he was really excited to get to remove his mask and become like part of Star Trek history
Yeah.
and sort of have this legacy in Trek, not just as a villain, but as the first Breen that we ever saw. So he was like, I think that's really cool.
Well, I thought it was a necessary episode to kind of flesh out Law and I forget her name, Mull. So it was necessary to flesh out their motivations for what they're doing it, and also that they were in love, an unlikely pair. Um, there's been a lot of backlash on the internet about revealing the Breen, although everybody agreed that the helmet update was so much cooler than it was in Deep Space Nine, and I agree with that. But I liked it. I liked the episode a lot. It gave the Breen something a little more for me than what I've seen in the past. What their motivations, a little bit of their power structure, a little bit how that works, and also how a little bit of nepotism and what Laws essentially had to live up to. And I thought their connection was interesting, and I like how they added in the flashbacks. So I thought it really fleshed them out a lot, and they're doing this, not necessarily for greed, but they're doing it to kind of, especially in Lao's point, to kind of rectify who he is and to kind of do something where he's standing on his own 2 feet. And her, I just think that she kind of likes to go against the grain, and I think that's why she's doing it. And beautifully played by both actors, and I thought it was a good episode.
The next story, Chris, you also wrote about PanCan,
Oh yeah,
Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. I did their walk last year, and
oh nice.
the Daily Star Trek News Army. I raised over $1,000.
That's nice.
So that was cool. I wasn't able to do it this week, or this year, but Chris, you wanna tell us a little bit about what your story was about?
Yeah, so of course the Star Trek group has been pretty active in that organization, in that fundraising effort. It's for pancreatic cancer, raises money to do research for pancreatic cancer, and the Star Trek team has been very active the last couple of years, and this year they were the top fundraising group. I don't remember right offhand how much they raised. I think it was over $200,000,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly. It was quite a bit, and so of course they bring some star power to it, but it's always good. They don't do it for the win, but it certainly did. It certainly did raise a lot of money for the organization. It's a really good cause, and so pancreatic cancer, it's one of those ones. It has a really low survival rate,
Yeah.
and so it can be aggressive. It's one of the ones that it has been kind of a focus for research because it is so aggressive with such a low survivability rate. But
Yeah.
that rate is up for 3 years in a row. It's up, and so the research efforts apparently are bearing some fruit, and so that's good news, and it's good news that the Star Trek team was able to raise quite a bit of money for future research.
Yeah, Jonathan recruited Jess Bush from Strange New Worlds, and she joined the march. And on his Instagram, they took a picture. I actually spoke to them about this march, and yeah, I mean it's such a worthy cause. My wife lost her aunt to pancreatic cancer, and he lost a brother. John Billingsley lost his mother to it. So, I mean, it means a lot to all of us. And it's great that I'm happy to do it anytime that they're available. And Jonathan, on a separate note, kind of credited John Billingsley for his role in Manhunt about the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. He played a prosecutor in that, and he did a great job too.
That's amazing. Yeah, your wife's aunt, that was just last year, right? That was right
It was
before
last
the
year,
last
yeah.
one. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Another notable is Armin Shimmerman's wife, Kitty Swink, who was in a couple of episodes of Deep Space Nine. Ironically, she never once had a scene with Quark, but she is actually one of the few pancreatic cancer survivors. And so they're big supporters of PanCan. And it's pretty miraculous because I mean it goes up every year, but for a long time.
Yeah, no, yeah, she's 20-year survivor,
Yeah.
and that is less than 1% of
Yeah.
people diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So she is, I mean, she's the goal, to get to that point. But pancreatic cancer usually by 5 years out, that's a long time. And so, I mean, Patrick Swayze was probably one of the more famous people to have pancreatic cancer, and we saw how fast he was like a strong, healthy guy, and it took him out. And so, but she is she's a miracle.
Yeah.
Oh, she's amazing, and what a fundraiser too, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. They do some great work, PanCan. Aster, what's your take on PanCan and the walk and all of that? What do you know about it?
Just thinking, I really do think it's impressive just how much money they're able to raise, and that these are people with full-time jobs who we see all over, and they're willing to devote their time and effort to this cause. And I love to see when actors and celebrities do charity work, because I think it's really good, and they've been fortunate enough to have a lucrative career. So it makes me really happy that Star Trek actors are sort of putting their time and effort into this very, very good cause, and they're doing a great job. Also, I think it's really like I love PanCan, like the
The
name
acronym?
PanCan. I think that's like really fortunate that happened. Like obviously horrible disease, but that you can call it PanCan is just awesome.
Yeah.
Somebody put a lot of effort into coming up with that, I'll bet.
Yeah.
But you're right, it's catchy. People remember it, and it's not one of those acronyms where you're like, I couldn't tell you what AFLAC means, but PanCan, it's Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. It just flows and you remember it. So yeah, whoever did their marketing was pretty brilliant, and should get a raise. Um, so I think that's some good news. We we've talked about all the other news, but now it's time to talk about the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery. If you have not watched it and don't want spoilers, turn off now and then come back and watch the rest of this. If you have seen it and are tired of listening to us, you can turn off now too. The rest of you hang out and we're gonna have a spirited discussion about the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery, Whistlespeak. And in the episode, just a quick recap, they realize where the latest clue has come from. It's come from a planet with water issues. They narrow it down. There's a lot of technobabble that gets them to the planet. Burnham and Tilly beam down and attempt not to ruin the Prime Directive, which of course always means they're going to ruin the Prime Directive. And they discover that there's this weather. There are these weather. I don't know what you call them, weather towers that cause rain, and they think the next clue is in one of those, and it's actually in a different one of the towers. But the main thrust of the episode is this people that communicate by whistling, which I think is a really cool, a little cool twist. They also talk in Federation Standard, but they have these whistles that the translator can translate. So anyway, that's the elevator pitch for the story. So be free and discuss. What's everybody's thoughts on it? Anybody can start. Whoever's interested.
Yeah. It's I read an article this morning that and it's basically what they used to call a filler episode. It's like I had some problems with it. Honestly, the B story to me was much more interesting, which was Culber essentially dealing with his mind meld, sort of like a mind meld, on Trill. And I thought that was much more interesting. And the scenes between Stamets and Culber were really cool. And even a scene between him and Book was really cool stuff. And to me, I looked at that as the A story and the other one as the B, because it wasn't, basically a race, and then where essentially the winners have to die, and it's like we've seen that before on Star Trek, haven't we? But I will say that Sonequa was excellent in the episode, especially at the end, where she has to deal with this culture and say, "Hey, we're not gods; we're people just like you," which is another Star Trek trope. But I did like that part of it, but not one of the best of the season. And of course, because it's the last season, it kind of it's very bittersweet. It's like, oh man, if it had a stronger episode there, it would have been good. And the article points out that I read that the whistle speak at the beginning of the episode was really kind of cool, and then it kind of went away the rest of the episode. So they could have developed that a little more too. But that's my take on it. It's a filler, not a great episode, but not a bad one. It's just there.
Aster is trying to keep himself in his seat. I
Well, it's
I
my
have
favorite.
the
It's
knowledge that you're about to get a counterpoint, Tony.
Okay.
Go
no,
ahead,
it's
Aster.
it's actually my favorite episode of this season so far. So, I mean, to each their own. To each their own.
Sure.
I really enjoy it, and I really enjoyed getting to see this new civilization, and I really enjoyed getting to see Michael sort of flex her xenoanthropology wings, and I thought it was super cool talking about like learning a bit about this culture and all of that, and I was having the time of my life, like sort of with this whole episode, and I thought it was really fun, and I felt like I was sort of learning so many things while watching it, even though they're fake. I was really excited about it, and I will say I really didn't like the way that they dealt with, they didn't just break the Prime Directive, they butchered it. They ground the Prime Directive to a pulp. That was my issue. I think if I was in Michael's shoes, I probably would have been like, I am a god. Ooh, you have to free them. That way, because it's just it's just awful. And then she sort of expects I forget his name, but the man to be like, yeah, this pre-warp civilization, you can deal with like isolinear chips, you'll be fine. You know, sure, you can fix it. You know nothing about anything. You don't know how electricity works, but I'm sure you'll figure this out. Like, what? I can't expect that's gonna go well. So
Yeah.
I
Um, Chris, are you gonna come down on one side or the other, or are you more moderate?
I'm a bit more moderate on this one. I did like the episode. I did like the character development that Dr. Culber is getting this season, the continued development there, and the actor's name who plays Culber has escaped my brain, but
Wilson Cruz.
okay, yeah, Wilson Cruz. Thank you very much. He is a phenomenal actor, and he's not always been given enough to do in his role in Discovery, I think. And so this season they finally figured out, oh hey, yeah, we've got this guy who's a really talented actor who's been acting for a very long time. Of those of you who are of a certain generation might remember an MTV show called My So-Called Life, where he was the gay best friend, and he was probably 17 maybe when he was doing that show, and so he's got a lot of experience, he's got a lot of acting chops, and he's finally getting a chance this season to show them off, and he's doing really great work. And so anytime he's on screen, it's been really good this season. So I did like that. I thought it was kind of the way the episode was structured, and some of the stuff, it reminded me of more old school Trek. It certainly was a TOS TNG sort of a thing to go undercover on a primitive. I don't even remember how many times Kirk and Spock and Bones went undercover in a primitive society. And so and so it is, I guess it's a trope, but it's sometimes those things that are familiar, it's like, it's like a like that beat up old pair of sneakers that you have that you just like to slip on sometimes. They're a bit worn out, but there's a comfort level that's there. And so seeing the Discovery crew doing a covert op like that, I enjoyed it. I thought it was well done within the trope. And but also, yeah, the whistle speak was a really interesting idea that they forgot about somewhere halfway through the script. So
Yeah. Which I thought was odd because the title of the episode is Whistlespeak. So
yeah.
the fact that they started out with it, and then when they actually got to know the people, they just completely abandoned the whole idea. I thought was a little weird. I wanted there to be much more of a payoff there.
Yeah.
But I love Wilson Cruz.
Yeah.
My family was transferred to England for a year when I had just graduated high school and my sister was still in high school, and my sister and my mother, to remind them of home, would regularly watch episodes of My So-Called Life. So when Wilson Cruz was on Discovery, my mother refers to him as Ricky, which was his character name. And every time he comes on the screen, she says, Ricky! That's not his name in this one, Mom. But so she's, and I love him as an actor, and I think he's a really decent person. And I love Culber. So I really agree that I love the Culber thing of it. I've watched this episode twice. I watched it when I first got the screener and didn't love it. I was much more in Tony's camp at that point. But then last night I rewatched it, and maybe the first time I watched it, I wasn't in the right mood or whatever. I liked it much better. I'm still not to Aster's enthusiasm about the episode. But I enjoyed it much better. It reminded me in kinship to the Next Generation episode, Who Watches the Watchers?
Yes.
And especially at the end where she reveals herself to that guy whose name I also forget. It reminded me a lot about that. I knew almost from the beginning that nobody was going to want to win this race because they were going to die. I mean, that's a trope that, as Tony said, we've seen 100 million times, and not just in Star Trek, but we've seen it a lot in Star Trek too. So I'm really fascinated by the Whistlespeak thing, and I think that could have been the most interesting part of the episode. I realized last night when I was watching, one thing that this show does that most of the others do not is they really are fascinated. The characters are really fascinated with these aspects of other cultures. Like when they beamed down and were listening to the Whistlespeak, you saw it on Burnham and Tilly's faces. How cool is this? We get to be here for this thing. It's like Tilly getting all excited about math in the first season. They just think all this stuff is so cool, which you would theoretically. And they just sort of take it as a matter of course in all these other Star Trek series, which maybe after a time you get jaded and you would, but I think there's still stuff that you're discovering out there that you'd be like, this is so cool. And I love that Discovery takes the time to sort of examine that and be like, yeah, this is cool. All right, let's get on to killing our characters. I just love, that's one of my favorite aspects of Discovery. It always has been, is that they just think science and discovery is so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I have to credit Mary Wiseman's performance, especially in the actual tomb or whatever, the temple. The scene that she had with the young lady was just a beautifully acted scene, and I thought one of her stronger episodes. And another character that we've seen glimpses of a little bit, but wish we would have gotten a little more of her.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was saying in an episode a few weeks ago, Tony, that I was not a fan of Tilly at the beginning of the series, but she's really grown on me, and it's been
Yeah.
fascinating watching her character grow and mature. And this is an example of that, this episode. She did a great job, and the character has really come to her adulthood, so to speak. So I really like that about the character too.
One minor note, it was interesting to see Rayner kind of acclimating himself a little more to the crew on the bridge. I thought, oh, okay, you can teach an old dog new tricks.
It's true, and he deals with Tal so well.
Yes.
His interactions with Adira in this episode were really interesting, I thought, and
Yeah.
he's understanding her a little bit more. I want to know more about his species, because
Yes.
when he first came on the show, I thought he was part Romulan, part Vulcan, part something that we already knew. And then like 5 episodes in, they finally, I don't remember them saying it ever before, but they finally referred to him as a Kelleran, as if we already all knew this information. But I don't remember ever being fed this information.
No, we weren't.
So I want to know
I
more
read an
about
article.
what the Kellerans are. What's that?
Yeah, I read something a couple of weeks ago where they, not in the show, but one of the showrunners mentioned that he was Kelleran, and they like appeared in one episode of Deep Space Nine. So
Oh,
it's not the
wow.
first time we've ever seen them, but it's the first time we've seen them in 30 years.
Yeah.
So
I don't
in that episode, it
but-
was an episode of Deep Space Nine. They were helping the Kellerans, and then the Kellerans double crossed them. The Kellerans are not favorably viewed in that episode. They're a little duplicitous, and so not necessarily villains, but definitely self-interested and not members of the Federation at that point in Deep Space Nine.
Oh, interesting, huh?
That is interesting. Yeah.
I mean, any species that boils their cakes can't be fully trusted.
No.
I'm really curious about how that would work.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been
Well,
wondering that too.
Like, I wonder
I
if it's
mean,
like bagels because you.
Yeah, that's what I
put,
was thinking, like a sweet
bagels
bagel.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Well,
Yeah, I
somebody
wouldn't
with a
want to
recipe.
see a celebrity bake off on that, I'll tell you that.
Boiled cake.
Yeah, forgot it.
So I just want to wrap up by talking a little bit about our Patreon. If you are a Patreon subscriber, thank you so much. You're keeping us running. Literally, we were able to pay our bills this month because of your support. So thank
great.
you so much for that. If you're not a Patreon subscriber, then head over to patreon.com/Daily Star Trek News and sign up. You get this video plus all my interviews and everything else. And I've got a few coming up. You get them 2 days early before the YouTube drops, and you also get ad free. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to have to suffer through some ads before you watch this, but you don't need to because you can sign up for Patreon. The other benefit is you get deleted scenes, which often there are many. This week I think not as many, but last week, man, I had a wealth of deleted scenes to choose from.
This is what I was telling you, Rick. Without you here, Aster and I are unsupervised.
I know.
And who knows? All bets are off when we are unsupervised.
And you get to see that on Patreon.
Well, there you go.
Also, we now have merch, and there will be more coming. We have Patreon rewards in the form of stickers and mugs and t-shirts. And there's going to be more at higher levels. But those are just the designs I have right now. And we're going to keep going and do a couple more designs for like maybe a hoodie, or, we're going to come up with some fun things. Also, I'm going to start doing contests for our Patreon members. I have a wealth of things I've been given to review, and an itty bitty apartment. So I don't have, and this is from, the moment I took over Daily Star Trek News, I've been sent stuff. So I've got stuff to give away. So I'll be doing contests and stuff. But the first contest, I want to invite a Patreon member onto this show to talk about the news with us one week. And so this is only open to Patreon members. So if you're interested in doing that, sign up for Patreon. What I want to do is I want to have, and thank you, Chris, for this suggestion. I want to have anybody who's interested send us a video and tell us why you should be considered to be on the show to talk about the news with Chris and Aster and maybe Tony and I and whoever else
Sure.
we can con into joining us. So send us a video. You can email us at info@dailystartreknews.com. You can send it to us via Patreon, whichever works best for you. And just let us know why you should be the one to come on. And I think I'm going to make this contest open through May. So you have plenty of time to make a video, sign up for Patreon, and submit. And then we'll do an episode in June with a special guest from our Patreon community. And if this is successful, if people like it, I will do this periodically. We'll do a contest to get people on to talk with us. So again, that's www.patreon.com/Daily Star Trek News. And come join us. Your dollars help us pay the bills, help us keep the lights on here at Daily Star Trek News. So, we have a lot of hosting fees and stuff, and, Tony knows because he has to do the same thing to
Oh, yeah.
with Sci-Fi Talk. So, so please join us for that. Chris Post and Aster Lufkin, thank you once again. Always a pleasure. Tony Tellado, thank you for joining us.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime.
Where can people find you if they want to follow you?
Well, the best place on X, it's at Sci-Fi Talk, and also if to listen to the podcast, subscribe at Apple Podcasts. I do have one bit of news because I just interviewed him this week. I talked to LeVar Burton this week. He Reading Rainbow celebrated an anniversary, and there is a documentary, Butterfly in the Sky, that is coming out about Reading Rainbow. And we also discussed Star Trek Picard. And he says, the way he tells it, it's pretty much a dead issue. However, recently, Jonathan Frakes was interviewed, and he said, what could work for Picard is what they're doing with Section 31, is to do it as a movie or a series of movies rather than a series. And that might actually work. I would love to see a series, yes, but I would love to see that too. So we'll see. But
yeah,
thank you. It's been a pleasure being here.
Well, thank you. That is, I had heard both of those news articles. I don't know if we've talked about them, but yeah, I think a Star Trek Picard movie could work well, or it might not. It depends on how they do it. I think that, and it depends on how successful Section 31 is going to be as well.
Terry Matalas has to be involved.
Exactly. So we'll see how that all turns out. Well, thank you all so much. We'll see you next week.